Welcome to the Real Talk with Megan podcast, where we have candid conversations about the things that matter most. I'm your host, Megan, and we're going to deep dive into the topic of mental health. In a world where we're constantly pressured to perform, achieve, and excel, it's easy to neglect our mental health. But the truth is, mental health is just as important as physical health, and it's time we started treating it as such. Join the conversation as we explore the complexities of mental health issues and speak with experts, advocates, and individuals who have lived through these challenges. Together, we'll work to destigmatize mental health and start conversations. So sit back, grab a cup of coffee, and get ready for a real and raw conversation about mental health on the Real Talk with Megan podcast. Stay-at-home moms don't get enough credit sometimes. Now, side note, I do know there are a lot of dads that stay at home, and I think that is so awesome. But today, I want to focus this podcast on what I know, and that's my own experience. So dads, I'm not trying to leave you out, but this episode is coming from a deep place of mom guilt that I've dealt with and things that I've learned from conversations I've had with other moms. Okay, so let's jump back in. I believe with everything inside of me that being a mom is one of the hardest jobs there is. You never get a break. You put everyone else before yourself. And do you ever get to finish a full cup of coffee while it's still warm? Well, if you have young kids, you know the answer is no. It might as well be iced coffee before you can finish it, if you even get to finish it at all. I've been in your shoes with 2 kids under the age of 3. One of which was a newborn. And those are the days when you just try to make sure your children are happy and fed and maybe get a nap. And you really need your house to be cleaned. But let's face it, the house probably won't get cleaned as you want it to be. I mean, every time I thought today is the day I'm going to get all the things done was usually the day my youngest had a blowout, me even multiple times, and the oldest one wanted the orange cup, not the blue cup. And when I gave her the orange cup, she no longer could drink out of anything that was orange. You know those days. It was also all before 8 a.m. Guess what's not going to happen on days like that? Cleaning. Cleaning is not going to happen. And before you know it, it's 5 p.m. and your husband comes home to a house that is a mess. The fact of the matter is you actually did pick up the toys in the living room during nap time, but 30 minutes before your husband walks through the door, your 2.5-year-old decides she needs to be Taz from Looney Tunes and proceeds to throw out every toy she owns in the middle of the floor. I mean, you gave it everything you had to make it through the day, and at this point, you had no energy left to give. This was my life. I was a stay-at-home mom for about 5 years. Now, I did have a few part-time volunteer jobs, but it only took a small amount of my time out of each week. After my oldest was born, I went back to work when my maternity leave was over, only to quit to stay at home when she was about 6 months old due to daycare. It was expensive. I mean, basically my whole paycheck was devoted to the cost of daycare. So that started my stay-at-home journey. Not long after quitting my job, we moved from our first apartment to our first house, and it was about 3 hours away from each other. My husband, he had a new job and we were in a new city, but we were so excited about the possibilities. Then, a 1.5 years later, we had our second child. Did anyone tell you that your second child is double the work? Yeah, I mean, I get that 1 + 1 = 2, but at least for me, having our second child felt like triple the work. And I now know why I felt that way. After having our second kid, I had postpartum depression, but I didn't know it. I always felt exhausted and I had a really short temper, but I acted like everything was a-okay. I hid how I was really feeling from everyone, but on the inside, it was eating me alive every moment of every day. I mean, I can look back now and I see that I should have reached out and talked to someone. I mean, first to my husband, and second, I should have talked to a counselor or a therapist, and third, I should have mentioned something to my doctor when, at the follow-up, they ask, "How are you doing?" But I didn't do any of those things. I always said, "I'm fine." It would have made my life much easier, or at least more manageable. But instead, I fought it all by myself, and I felt alone. And when I did start opening up to my husband, he was so supportive. I told him that I really wanted to go back to work whenever I was able to, and I mean, at this point, we had a 4-year-old and a 1.5-year-old, so I knew it would have to be when they got into school that I would be able to go back to work. So that's when I started some hobby side businesses to help out with my sanity and our finances. I started baking and taking photos, both of which I loved to do, and it made me feel like I was actually doing work and being a part of the family. I mean, I finally started to feel like myself again. A lot of thoughts that were going through my mind during this time were thoughts that I wasn't a good mom because I just wanted to get away from my kids at times. I kept seeing all these other moms who made it look like they had it all together and they loved every moment of being with their kids. And I was comparing myself to their best moments against some of my worst moments. I want to let you in on a little secret. Comparing yourself to others doesn't do you any good. It only makes you feel worse. But I was completely guilty of doing this time and time again. Mom guilt is strong and really hard to break. Break that thought that you need to be all the things for all people. It is an impossible, ideal image to live up to. I was a mom who loved my kids, but also kind of really liked the idea of working outside the home. Going into an office was a dream of mine. When my kids were little, I found ways to work from home so we didn't have to worry about the extra expenses like daycare. When my oldest was old enough to start kindergarten, I was probably the happiest mom on the school drop-off line. I know some moms are crying because they can't believe their baby is starting school, but I, on the other hand, I couldn't have been happier. She loved school, and I was excited to hear all about it when she got home. I was also just as excited to have one kid in school during the day because that meant I only had one kid at home. It's just a fact. It's easier sometimes to just have one kid. Soon after my oldest started kindergarten, I started going to my gym more regularly. This was really nice because they have a kids zone where you can drop off your kids, go work out for up to 2 hours, and pick your kid back up when you're done working out. Guys, I got time to myself. The best part was I didn't feel like I was inconveniencing someone. I remember the day I was asked to join the staff at church part-time, and that meant our youngest would go to preschool 3 days a week. She was so excited to start school just like her big sister. And I was finally going to get to go into an office with adults. If you spend all day with your kids, you crave conversations with adults, even for introverts like me. It's really nice to have a conversation that doesn't involve bodily fluids or cartoons. And if I wanted to be a little crazy, I would sit in my office in silence. I say all this to say that if you are a stay-at-home mom and you feel stuck, I want to encourage you to take time for yourself. It doesn't have to be a long time, but find something that is just for you. You may have heard the phrase, you can't pour from an empty cup. In reality, you can pour from one, but it isn't helpful for anyone. Moms, you give so much of yourself. So take notice when you feel that your cup is getting close to empty and take the steps to fill it up. How do you fill up your cup is going to look different for everyone. For some, you may need to get a good workout in. And for others, you may need to take time for a bubble bath or time to read a book. Find out what you need to do to fill your cup and put a plan in place. Also, talk to the people around you so that you can make sure you make that happen. Looking back now, would I have done anything differently? Yeah, probably in some areas. But more importantly, I would have talked to someone and not let the shame and mom guilt run my life. Lying to yourself and hiding behind a smile can take you to some pretty dark places. If any part of this podcast felt familiar, please know that you're not alone and you do not have to walk this journey alone, no matter what season of life you're in. Reach out to me, a friend, a loved one, to someone. I don't know whoever said that asking for help showed that you were weak, but boy, were they wrong. It takes so much strength to ask for help. Thanks for listening to Real Talk with Megan. Remember, you are not alone. Seeking help is a sign of strength, and taking care of your mental health is just as important as taking care of your physical health. We'll see you next time for more honest conversations.